Well, welcome, Amanda, to a Me podcast. Lovely having you online,
Lovely to be here.
virtually.
Thank you.
So, could you tell the audience, the listeners, who you are and what it is that you do, please?
Yes, of course. My name is Amanda Hamilton, and I'm the Chief Executive of the National Association of Licensed Paralegals, NALP for short. I also run our training arm, which is the National Paralegal College.
Brilliant. And how did you get into that? Because that's a big piece of work, isn't it? I mean, that doesn't just happen overnight.
It is quite fundamentally big when I think about it, but my transition into it was kind of a natural thing in that some 25 years ago, I was made redundant and I decided to set up a practical skills course for paralegals. And at the time, it was based on a current course, which was run by somebody else who'd found accreditation with what was then known as the Paralegals, or National Paralegal Association. I started running my course alongside this other chap, and so our course was accredited by the predecessor to the National Association of Licensed Paralegals. And I got to know the chap that ran the organization. And we had many, many discussions on the status of paralegals, on the status of the legal services sector generally over a long period of time. And when it came to 2006, 2007, he said to me that he wanted to retire and would I be interested in taking over the
Oh,
whole
okay.
the whole association. He said, "You're the
Wow.
only person that I know of who's got a passion for what we do," which was very nice indeed.
Oh,
And I could not really pass up that opportunity.
oh,
So
lovely.
I've been CEO now for since February 2008. So
Wow, some time.
it's 12 years, which I never actually, to be honest, saw myself lasting this long. I thought it would be a 5 or 6 year stint before I could pass on the mantle, but I've got very much involved in the whole growth of the paralegal sector, and here I am, still in the role today.
Well done. That's fantastic. And just explain to people what paralegals are and what do they do and what does it mean to be one and how do you become one?
Okay, so there's a lot of myths surrounding what a paralegal is, but our definition is that it is an individual who performs legal tasks and duties, but who is not a qualified solicitor, barrister, or chartered legal executive. Now,
Okay.
traditionally, in the early years, paralegals only worked for solicitors. But over a long
Okay.
period of time, that has changed, and it's changed for various reasons. Partly the access to justice that consumers have. And before 2013, consumers, lay people, had the opportunity to get legal funding, what we used to call legal aid,
Mm.
which has virtually been eradicated. And since 2013, the role of paralegals has become extremely important to offer that
Mm.
access to justice at a reasonable cost to consumers. Um, so there are two types of paralegals who want to be solicitors and therefore work as paralegals in law firms in order to get a training contract to train to be a solicitor. And
Ah,
the other 50%, if you like, are people who've trained as paralegals who want to be professional career paralegals and offer services directly to the consumer. Now,
right.
the fact is that paralegals are not
Mhm.
statutorily regulated like
Gotcha.
solicitors and barristers and chartered legal executives are, which means that the profession is open to anyone and anyone can refer to themselves as paralegals. So, this is where we step in as a voluntary regulatory body. We encourage those people who want to be
Mm.
paralegals to join our association and be regulated by us. And that means that we have a very strong vetting process.
Okay.
We do reject probably about a third of people that apply to us. We reject because they either haven't got qualifications or the competency or the experience that we would say they would need, or indeed wish to study as paralegals, because we can
Mm.
offer membership to those who are studying paralegal qualifications. Um,
Oh, okay.
so the other question you asked is, how do you become a paralegal?
Yeah.
Um, the two routes are the conventional route to becoming a solicitor, which at the current time is to have a law degree, then do a postgraduate diploma, whether it be a professional diploma to become a solicitor or a professional diploma to become a barrister. And then if you take the solicitor's route, then you need to find a 2-year training contract with a solicitor, and then you qualify. If you want to take the
Wow.
barrister's route, you take the bar professional training course, then you have to find a 12-month pupillage, and then you qualify and can only practice
Wow.
when you find a tenancy in a set of chambers, which is all very conventional. Or there's the other route, which is the route that we can offer, which is to take a nationally recognized paralegal qualification, uh, and and become qualified through that route without the without going through the conventional route to become a solicitor, which most people in the profession believe that a paralegal is somebody with a law degree who's perhaps taken the professional exams, who is
Mm.
waiting their turn to become a solicitor, but actually that's not the case. So
Right.
we offer through our training arm and the other centres nationally recognised paralegal qualifications, and as such, we're regulated. Our qualifications are accredited and regulated by Ofqual, which is the government body that accredits national qualifications such as GCSEs and A levels.
So, what was your route? So, let's go back to kind of, if I'm allowed to kind of
Of
childhood. Where was kind of childhood for you and upbringing? And because I mean, kind of to be CEO. I mean, that's a big role. But how did you get to that? Because it's not just a straight path, right?
It's absolutely not a straight path, and certainly for me, that is so. I started off life. I mean, I have to say, I do come from a legal background. Both my parents were
Okay.
lawyers, but this was not the path that I had chosen for myself. I
Okay.
was always a sportswoman at school. I wanted to be a professional sportswoman. I had no tendencies towards academia whatsoever.
Wow.
So the result of that is that I left school, even though I'd taken A levels, I hadn't passed them, and I left school with basic minimum O levels, as they were at the time, GCSEs now.
Wow.
Uh, and my path was extremely sort of up and down and varied. That you wouldn't in a million years understand why I'm here now doing what I'm doing when you look at myself in my late teens and early 20s, because
Wow.
the first thing I did was the first thing that I sort of stumbled into, if you like, was to train to be a beauty therapist.
Ah,
And
gosh,
Yeah, that was at the age of 18.
that's fantastic.
I love sport, but I was told I didn't have academic prowess enough to go through the sports route, maybe to become a physical education teacher or a coach at the time. So I
Mm.
stumbled into beauty therapy, uh, which has always stood me in good stead. And then for a while, I gave that up and went into retail management for a few years until I realized that actually I needed to get some more qualifications. And at that
Right.
point, at the age of sort of 21, 22, I decided to go back to school. I took a couple of
Wow.
A levels at a college, and then one of those A levels was law. Um, I did
Okay.
law and politics, and then I just thought, I've got these now. Where do I go from here? And it was my father actually that persuaded me I should go for a law degree. So at
Wow.
a
Wow.
reasonably mature age, at this time I was 23, I think, I
Mm.
um, I signed up for a law degree at what is now Thames Valley University. No, it's not Thames Valley. What am I saying? University of West London. It's had various
Yeah.
name
Yeah.
changes, and that's when I started the law route.
Mm.
But in fact, I I was working with my father after I completed my degree, and my thoughts were to go into being a solicitor. And I was
Mm.
working with him for a while, for about 5 years, but I never made it through the professional exams. And then,
Right.
unfortunately, I had a, a sad thing happen. My father died suddenly. Um,
Right. Right.
and my life took a different turn. I went in,
Right.
believe it or not, I went into the property business. I became a lettings consultant because I joined a small agency, and started running their rental department. And then I broke off and started my own consultancy for a while. Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
up and down. I can't tell you. I've done so many different things.
That's
Uh,
fantastic. Love it.
but how I got into training paralegals was because I was headhunted into a large property agency, and then 4 years later, I was made redundant. And at the right old age of 40, I was told, "Oh my God, you're 40. You'll never get another job. You're old. You're over
That's
the
it.
hill.
It's over.
It's over." Um, and then I stumbled onto this course that I sort of saw huge potential for. I'd never
Mm.
taught before, but
Mm.
I worked alongside this chap, and then I branched out on my own. And that practical skills course, which we now run as part of our training arm as
Mm.
a paralegal practical skills course, I ran under my own business for 20 odd years. And it was through running that course and teaching that course that I met, and this is where we catch up with what I said earlier,
Mm.
where I
Mm.
met the guy that ran the Paralegal Association, and I started teaching for him and the courses that he ran at the time, which, by the way, were not regulated or nationally recognised courses. Um,
Right.
and that's when he asked me whether I'd take over. And here we are, up to date. 2008, I took over, and in 2000, at the end of 2009, we became an Ofqual accredited awarding organisation, so that all our qualifications could be on the national register. And
Mm.
we've gone
Mm.
from strength to strength since then.
Mm.
I'm pleased to
And
say.
in terms of members, how many members do you have?
Oh, it's always a difficult one to answer, and simply because retention of membership in any membership organisation is
Yes.
difficult. But we've got about 7.5 to 8,000 on our database,
Gosh.
um, and currently it's around about 1,400 current members, which is not a great deal, to be honest, but we're working on how to retain our members. And it's become a very important part of working
Mm.
as a paralegal to have a professional body behind you. And this is what I try and get across. I do write quite a number of articles about the importance of recognizing paralegals, both from the consumer's point of view, from the business point of view, and from the paralegal individual's point of view, to recognize, oh,
Mm.
I'm doing this legal task. I am therefore a paralegal. Perhaps I should join a professional body. So
Yes.
I'm trying to get that message across. Um, but we do have an extremely complicated legal services sector in England and Wales, and it is different and more unique than anywhere else in the world, including Scotland, um,
Mm.
simply because we have a different system of law and there are so many different legal professionals involved in the sector. So we have to kind of juxtaposition ourselves as paralegals up there with the regulated professionals, solicitors, barristers, and chartered legal executives, to let people know we're here, let the sector know we're a fit for
Mm.
purpose organization looking after our members, and also to let consumers know about the work that paralegals do and how they can help them.
Fantastic. So, what have you learnt along the way? I mean, because it's quite a way, isn't it? I mean, it's always a quite an in-depth
Mm,
journey that one
mm.
takes. So, what have you learned? What have been the key things that?
Well, it's been a very huge learning curve for me as a businesswoman, but more
Mm,
importantly, the passion that I have for our sector has helped me through. And what I've learned is that along the way, there are going to be jolts, there are going to be difficult times, and there have been for sure. Not
mm,
only sort of financially, but with other organizations trying to, shall we say, muscle in, putting it mildly. So you have to really just be determined to see your passion through, to get your message across, do what you do best with a bit of determination. And there have been times when I've thought, you know what, I don't think I can do this anymore. The stress, the pressure. But then I
mm,
think to myself, well, I've got to see this through, because if I don't, who will? And I have still got this passion for the paralegal sector, for getting that sector recognised as it should be. So that's what
mm,
keeps me going. And I can't deny there've been huge troughs, difficult times, times when I've had to bolster up the business for
mm.
my personal uh, funding and that sort of thing. But it's been worthwhile. I do not regret any of it at all.
Oh, lovely. And who would you say has been a real kind of beacon for you, or have there been several people kind of through your life that have helped, and how have they helped you?
That's a very good question. I think that when my mother was alive, she was a great inspiration, and she
Oh,
unfortunately died in 2005. So she never actually saw me take over now.
oh,
But in everything I did, she was a great encourager, and she was also quite a formidable woman. She herself was a barrister, and then
gosh,
became a judge, and she was
wow.
a big a, a big influence on my life. The other thing, there have been various people that have come in and out of my life, but essentially, to have a stable, secure home life and a work-life balance is very important. And so I have a lot of other interests outside of my work, and that helps to put things in perspective. But
Mm,
there are
mm,
the most important thing for me is to have positive people around me. Uh,
okay.
and I have had instances where I've worked with people who are not so positive, and that always, in my experience, kind of pulls you down in one way or another. I think it's very
Mm,
important to have a team of people that you enjoy working with, that are positive, that are on the same plane as you insofar as what they want to do with the business, and they're into it. And I think that's what I've learned, that the importance of having positive influences around you, and especially with the people you work with.
yeah, because it is important, isn't it, to have that sort of nurturing spirit around you that supports you and isn't kind of negative.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really, really important. So, what would you say have been some of the sort of or the biggest kind of obstacles that you kind of encountered, and how has all of that support and because your mother sounds a wonderful woman,
Hmm.
and wow, barrister to a judge, and the home environment, being supportive. So, how has that helped you when obstacles have kind of come along?
I think it's there are several things that have come out of all this, which is you must reap the consequences of what you do. And everything in life you have to take a
Right.
chance with. But whatever
Mm,
happens as a result, you have to take on the consequences and deal with those consequences. Number one.
brilliant.
There's
Brilliant.
no one way of doing anything. That
Love that.
it's trial and error, and you've got to use your best and better judgment on everything.
Mm,
Um, so I think, and the determination, the troughs have been both involving people I worked with who have not had the same mindset as I have had. The troughs are also in business, the financial troughs that you come up against every now and then. Thankfully, touch wood, I think that those financial troughs are, we've seen the end of that, I hope and pray. That we've
mm,
been doing reasonably well. But
mm.
uh, it, it's people. It's also the low end was where there were other competitors who were trying to, well, for want of a better phrase, do the dirty on you, try and get one over
Yes,
on
of
you.
course.
And it's very, very important. I put this out to anyone there starting up your own business. If you believe in what you do, put your head down and do it to the best of your ability. And doesn't matter what the competition is doing. You've got to do what
No,
you think.
lovely.
You need to follow your heart, your passion, and just see that through.
No,
Um,
I love that.
I think that's the main thing that I've taken from my sort of last 12 years in particular.
Mm,
You know, head
mm.
down, do what you do best, and your passion will pull you through.
That's brilliant. And would that have been the advice that you would have given your younger self? So if you could go back to this wonderful teenager who loved sport, didn't kind of know what you were doing or whatever,
Mm.
would that be the advice you'd pass back to yourself?
Yes, I think it's I would do, but as a young person, I know now, looking back, I had no confidence, self-confidence. And it doesn't matter what background you're brought up in and how supportive your background is.
Mm,
That in some ways has got nothing to do with it. You've got to find your inner confidence, and the only way to do that is really to start searching inwards and start liking yourself for who you are. You know, you can only gain your confidence if you like the person that is there. And I would say that to my younger self. I'd say, uh, dig deep, find out who you are, and be happy with that, because that's where
that's
everything
really nice.
stems from. Yeah,
So that sort of personal platform foundation, build that.
yes, precisely. A
That's really
good
lovely.
way of
And,
putting it.
and yeah, and would you give that advice to others? Whatever, because regardless of age, life is tough, isn't it? I mean, we
It
have
is.
great days, we have not so great days, and everything in between, really. So, is that something you'd like to give advice to for others?
Yes, I think so. I think be happy with who you are.
Mm,
Once you're happy with who you are, then things will flow from there. It's easy to say because, as you rightly say,
I
everybody
love that.
has their downside, and it doesn't matter
Mm,
what environment you grow up in. You know, whether you come from a broken home, whether you come from a non-broken home with supportive parents, there is always something there that will affect you, whether it be your peers, whether it be a lack of confidence because you don't feel as academic as the people around you, which I think is probably
mm.
what happened to me initially. I think, yes, I said, you know, I would say, think about the person you are, like the person you are, and your life will flow from there.
That's really, really nice. I like that. And in terms of what legacy would you like to leave behind? And I don't want to get to sort of jump to the end of one's life, but it would be, if you could kind of summarize, what is it you'd like to leave behind to people to pass on?
Oh gosh, that's a difficult one. Um, I'd like to think that the people I work with have appreciated the the method in which I've grown the business and will keep that flowing. But the legacy,
Mm.
I think, is the paralegal legacy. Um,
Oh, right.
Paralegals are here to stay. They are people who are just as qualified or just as competent as other lawyers. They are. There are certain things they can't do, but there are certain and many things they can do for people. And I
Mm.
think that
Mm.
these days, without legal funding, consumers are at a difficult point because they either have to be forced to represent themselves, or because most people can't afford the fees of solicitors and barristers. And therefore, to know that there is another profession that is sort of taking the slack that would be able to assist them for a relatively smallish fee at a
Mm.
relatively small cost, and that they are out there to assist you getting access to justice at a reasonable cost. I think that would be my legacy.
That's lovely. I love those three words that you said at the beginning, access to justice. I love that. I
Mm,
mean, justice as a word is just beautiful in itself, isn't it? But access to it, allowing people,
yes.
to gain that is wonderful. And what one word would you use to describe yourself?
One word. Uh,
Yep.
I think probably passionate. Probably
Okay.
it
And
was
do
a
you
toss
think
up.
that?
Sorry to interrupt you, but it was a toss up between passionate and determined.
Yeah,
Um,
it's funny actually. I was I was preempting and I'd written down determined, but I've superseded that with passionate. And do you think that is such a? I mean, it's tough for young people. We spoke about this the other day, didn't we? It's really, really hard. I mean, regardless of COVID and the situation it's creating and created, for young people, it's really, really hard, isn't it? And would you think that that's a really good? I mean, I love your thing about know yourself and be happy with who you are, whatever. But that's difficult for
it
a lot of
is.
young people now, isn't it?
It's very, very difficult because there are so many distractions that take you off your
Yeah,
path. Um,
yeah,
I mean, technology is good in one respect, but in another respect, with social media, it has been a disaster for young people, in my view.
mm,
Um,
mm,
the old, the old-fashioned way of go out and play with your friends in the forest or wherever it is, doesn't happen
mm,
anymore. It's let's play a game over the internet. It's there's a lot of. I was very slow coming to technology, I have to say.
mm,
Now that I have it in my grasp, I think it has its uses, but it's certainly, I think, for younger people, is is a distraction from them to be able to find themselves, I think. Yes, it's
mm,
possible you might think, oh, I'm playing this game. I'd love to be able to develop, you know, computer games. Fine, okay, if you've got a penchant for that. But
mm,
you've got to ask yourself the question, what are they missing out on that perhaps, and this is a very old-fashioned thing to say, and I'm quite a progressive person really, but what are they
mm,
missing out on that we as kids may have had and they don't
mm,
have anymore? Uh,
mm,
Having said that, even as a child myself, I had my problems. So there are always going to be difficulties for every young person. Um,
mm,
but I would also offer them this advice that don't be in too much of a rush to rush into anything. Because I was a very late developer. It wasn't till I was 40 that I realized I had a skill for teaching and a love of teaching.
mm,
Took me till I was 40 years old to find that out. So if you're 20 or 25, or even in your late 20s, and you haven't found your niche, don't panic. uh, what you've done builds up to the person that you are today, and hopefully at some point or another in your life you will find your little niche that suits you. So I think don't be in a rush, but also uh, try and dig deep into yourself. I'm not sure what sort of younger person we're talking to here, but certainly
mm,
somebody in their late teens or 20s as adults should be able to
mm,
dig deep and try and suss out that if they're in a bad situation mixing with bad lot of people, that they should say to themselves, am I worth more than this? Should I be
mm,
doing something more for myself? Um, there is a strand of philosophy which basically says you should never do anything in life because other people expect you to do it, or say anything because other people expect you to say it. You should do
yeah,
everything
that's nice.
for yourself. And it sounds a very selfish thing, but actually it works out brilliantly for the better.
Mm,
Because if you do
mm,
everything according to what you want, there can be no dishonesty, there is transparency. This is what you're doing, this is how you're doing it, and everybody knows who you are. Whereas if you are lying to yourself and saying something because you expect other people that you should be saying this, then you're not being honest with yourself, and you're not being honest with other people. So it's
yeah, I like
a
that. There
difficult.
was a brilliant, yes, there was a lovely poster I always remember at school. It was only small, I don't know, A3 or whatever. And it was a picture of a seagull on a blue sky, and it says, "No bird soars too high when it soars with its own wings." And it's always
That's
stuck with me that. And and it's so true, isn't it?
it
Be true
is.
to yourself.
It is.
Find that purpose, that passion. Whether you find it at 10, 15, 50, or 40 or whatever, it doesn't matter, but always be true to yourself.
That's it.
Amanda, it's been lovely talking to you.
Oh,
I mean,
thank
it
you.
really has.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Sid.
And thank you very much for your time. And
No problem.
lots of great stuff in there. There really is. I love the whole thing about access to justice, but also access to yourself as well, and being determined and finding your passion. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to meet you, and thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.